When we first meet Finn, he is defined by one simple thing: his desire to be good, not powerful, not famous, not wise, just good. His entire being radiates that bright, uncomplicated energy of a child who believes that if you do the right thing, everything will be okay. He's the boy who wants to help, who runs toward cries for help without hesitation, whose idea of justice is as pure as sunlight on a clear morning. But as with all light, there are shadows waiting behind it. Finn's goodness is not static, it's a seed, and over time it will grow, bend, and reshape itself in ways he could never imagine. At the beginning, Finn sees the world in absolutes. There are good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains. His purpose seems clear: to fight monsters, save innocence, and keep Ooo safe. He believes that being a hero means being fearless and righteous, that courage is the same as perfection. This vision gives him strength. It's the light that pushes him forward through danger and confusion. But beneath that light is something else, something quieter and truer: the need to matter. Finn doesn't want to be good just because it's right. He wants to be good because it gives him meaning in a world that, even from the start, feels much bigger and stranger than he can understand. Finn's goodness comes from his heart, but it's also a shield. The land of Ooo is unpredictable, a world where candy can talk, where kingdoms rise and melt, where gods and monsters coexist. In that chaos, Finn's sense of morality gives him structure. It's how he tells himself who he is. He fights not just to protect others, but to confirm to himself that he's doing the right thing. The sword, the backpack, the shouts of algebraic, all of it is ritual, a child's way of creating order out of uncertainty. His moral code becomes a compass, even when the map of Ooo doesn't make sense. At this stage of his life, Finn's goodness is innocent, almost fragile in its simplicity. He believes that bad things can always be defeated, that good people always win, and that kindness is enough to fix everything. It's a beautiful illusion, and it gives him strength when he needs it most. But Adventure Time never leaves illusions untested. Over the course of his story, every part of Finn's worldview will be challenged. He will learn that good and evil blur together, that love can wound as deeply as hate, and that being a hero doesn't always mean being right. But before any of that happens, we need to understand what makes his early purity so powerful and so dangerous. Finn's sense of good is not abstract. It's physical. He throws himself into it with his whole body. Every punch he lands, every reckless leap into danger, is a manifestation of his belief that doing something is better than doing nothing. In his mind, motion itself is moral, movement toward helping, toward saving, toward proving that he's worth the air he breathes. His goodness is kinetic, restless. He can't sit still because stillness feels like failure, but the heart beneath that energy is sincere. Finn's goodness isn't performative. He genuinely loves people. He loves their quirks, their weirdness, their flaws. He has no prejudice, no instinct to judge. To him, everyone in Ooo, even the so-called bad guys, is part of the same big living story. He doesn't know it yet, but that openness is the beginning of his deepest wisdom. He just hasn't learned how to hold it without hurting himself. Finn's relationship with Jake becomes the first mirror of his morality. Jake is calm, intuitive, a creature who understands balance. To Finn, Jake represents the ease he doesn't yet have, the ability to live without needing to prove anything. Jake's nonchalance frustrates Finn sometimes, because to him, heroism requires urgency. How can Jake be so relaxed when there's always something to fix? But Jake sees the truth that Finn hasn't yet learned. that goodness is not a performance, it's a way of being. It's not loud, it doesn't always rush. For Finn, doing good is still about control, about shaping the world into something fair. He hasn't yet realized that the world resists control, that sometimes doing good and doing harm can share the same face. When he fights evil, he feels powerful and righteous. But what happens when evil isn't clear? What happens when he has to choose between two rights or two wrongs? The boy who wanted to be good will soon face the truth that goodness, real goodness, is not about purity, it's about humility. At this point in his life, though, Finn still sees himself as a knight of light. He moves through the world with boundless confidence. His laughter echoes through the forests of Oo like a promise that innocence still exists somewhere. And that belief gives hope not just to himself, but to everyone around him. He's proof that even in a world rebuilt from apocalypse, goodness can still grow. His very existence feels like resistance against cynicism. Finn's childhood morality is also shaped by longing. Somewhere deep inside, he knows he's one of the last humans. He doesn't fully understand what that means yet, but the absence hums beneath his joy. His need to be good isn't just about helping others, it's about finding belonging. He hopes that if he's brave enough, kind enough, pure enough, the world will tell him who he is. But the world can't answer that question for him. The journey toward that answer is the real adventure, and it will require him to lose, to break, and to rebuild what he thinks good means. What makes Finn's early goodness so poignant is how earnestly he believes in it. There's no irony, no doubt. His optimism isn't ignorance, it's courage. To wake up every day in a post-apocalyptic land of monsters and still choose kindness is not naivety, it's defiance. His goodness, though simple, is an act of rebellion against despair. Even when fear flickers at the edge of his heart, he faces it with wide eyes and a smile. That purity, however short-lived, is beautiful. But as he grows, that same purity will start to ache. He'll begin to see that goodness isn't always rewarded, that kindness doesn't always fix what's broken, that being a hero doesn't shield you from loss. The boy who wanted to be good will have to face the truth that sometimes good people hurt others, and sometimes doing the right thing feels indistinguishable from doing the wrong one. And that realization, painful, slow, necessary, will become the cornerstone of his maturity. For now, though, Finn's world is still simple. Monsters roar, heroes rise, and he stands at the centre of it, sword in hand, ready to protect. His heart beats in rhythm with the land itself, full of promise, untarnished by doubt. He hasn't yet seen how deep Oo's mysteries run, how complicated people can be, how fragile ideals become when tested by love and loss. He still believes that goodness is enough, and for the moment it is. That belief carries him forward, unshaken, radiant. In the glow of that youth, Finn embodies something the series rarely names but always honours: hope. The hope that even after everything, kindness can still grow in the ruins. The hope that courage can come without cruelty. The hope that being good, even if it's imperfect, even if it's naive, still matters. This early Finn, the boy who wanted to be good, doesn't yet understand that being human means breaking and rebuilding that goodness over and over again. But the seed has been planted. In his laughter and his bravery lies the promise of someone who will learn not just how to save the world, but how to live in it. He's not there yet, but he's on his way. And as the sun rises over Oo, the boy who wants to be good lifts his sword again, not to conquer, but to understand. For as long as he can remember, Finn the human believed that being a hero meant saving everyone. He imagined heroism as a shining path clear, noble, righteous. He thought that courage could always defeat cruelty, that the strong should always protect the weak, that good intentions guaranteed good outcomes. But as the world grew larger and the years pressed on, that light began to flicker. The path that once seemed so straight began to twist, and somewhere in that twisting, Finn discovered one of the hardest truths a person can learn, that the idea of a hero is not as pure as it seems. The illusion begins with victory. Finn's early triumphs are thrilling. Monsters defeated, kingdoms saved, cheers in the air. Each win reinforces his belief that he's doing exactly what he's meant to do. But slowly, he starts to notice the cracks. Every battle leaves something behind. A wound that doesn't heal, a friend who changes, a truth that doesn't fit neatly into good and evil. The world doesn't reset after his victories. It remembers. It carries the echoes of every choice he makes. This is when Finn begins to sense that the role of a hero might not be as clean as he once imagined. He sees that every time he charges in to fix something, he's also disrupting something else. His sword doesn't just cut monsters, it cuts consequences loose. He saves people who sometimes didn't want saving, interferes in conflicts he doesn't fully understand, and begins to feel the weight of choices that can't be undone. It's the first shadow over his childhood light, realizing that doing good isn't simple when everyone's idea of good is different. Finn's illusion of heroism is built on stories, the ones he told himself and the ones the world told him. Tales of knights, of justice, of bravery rewarded. But Ooo is not a fairy tale. Its beauty is laced with decay, its joy built on ruins. The more Finn grows, the more he sees that Oo's peace is blux, always temporary, that kindness and cruelty coexist in the same faces. The people he saves today may become the ones who hurt him tomorrow. The monsters he defeats may have stories he never bothered to hear. It's a slow disillusionment, but it changes everything. He starts to realize that being a hero doesn't automatically make him right. It's a painful realization, because for Finn, heroism was never about pride, it was about identity. It's who he believed he was. Without that, he feels lost. The boy who once shouted, "Mathematical!" as he charged into danger begins to hesitate. He asks questions he never asked before. Am I helping? Or am I just fighting because I don't know what else to do? Those questions mark the beginning of maturity, the point where doing good shifts from instinct to understanding. Jake, as always, becomes his quiet counterbalance. Where Finn sees crisis, Jake sees flow. When Finn struggles with guilt or confusion after a battle, Jake reminds him that not every problem can be solved through action. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is nothing. For a long time that idea frustrates Finn. How can doing nothing ever be good? But as he grows, he begins to see what Jake meant. That action without awareness can cause more harm than inaction with compassion. The world doesn't need heroes who act from ego. It needs people who act from love, even if that love looks passive from the outside. The illusion of the hero begins to crumble further when Finn encounters the consequences of his own strength. There are moments when he wins the fight but loses something else. Trust, innocence, connection. He begins to see that heroism, when tied to violence, always carries a cost. He starts to feel the echo of every swing of his sword, every enemy who looked more like a person than a monster. And for the first time, he wonders, what if the fight isn't always the point? What if the truest act of courage is to stop fighting? These questions don't make Finn weaker. They make him more human. They open the space inside him where empathy, can grow deeper roots. The old version of Finn, the boy who wanted to be good, lived in a world of right and wrong. The new Finn sees a world of choices, all imperfect, all necessary. The illusion that once made him confident now makes him humble. He starts to listen more, to think more, to see others as equals rather than missions. In that humility, his heroism becomes something quieter but truer. Finn's changing idea of heroism also mirrors his changing relationship with Oo. As he matures, the world stops being a stage for his adventures and becomes a living thing, full of its own wounds and histories. He realizes that Oo doesn't need a savior, it needs a friend. The forests, the kingdoms, the people, they all carry their own stories, and Finn is just one of them. His role is not to fix the world, but to be part of it. That shift, from conqueror to participant, is the heart of his evolution. There's also guilt in this stage of his life, though he rarely names it. He begins to feel the weight of how much he's changed things, how many people's paths he's tangled by rushing to help. He doesn't yet know how to make peace with that. The impulse to do good is still strong, but it's tempered by a growing awareness of complexity. He still runs toward cries for help, but his steps are heavier now, more thoughtful. His courage hasn't disappeared, it's simply deepened. As the illusion fades, Finn starts to notice something beautiful beneath it, something more real than the shining dream he once chased. When he stops trying to be the perfect hero, he becomes something better, a person. He starts to understand that being human is not about always doing good, but about trying, failing, and trying again. Heroism, he learns, isn't a title or a role. It's a way of being honest with yourself and kind to others, even when you fall short. That lesson doesn't come easily. There are moments when Finn's disillusionment turns into despair. He feels like a fraud, like the stories he once lived by were lies. But with time, he begins to see that the loss of illusion isn't the loss of meaning. It's the beginning of truth. The world is still beautiful, just more complicated. And that complexity doesn't destroy his goodness, it refines it. By the time Finn steps fully into himself, the word hero no longer defines him. It's just one of many faces he wears, one of many truths he's learned to hold. The illusion that once guided him fades, but the light behind it remains, softer and more honest. He doesn't fight to prove he's good anymore. He acts because it feels right, because compassion has become his instinct rather than his armor. The boy who wanted to be good has begun to grow into something greater than a hero. He's becoming a person who understands that doing good and being good are not the same thing, that goodness isn't a performance, but a process. And in that process, in that humble, imperfect, beautiful search, Finn begins to see the truth that will carry him through everything that follows, that there are no perfect heroes, only people who love enough to try. If Finn's story begins with courage in his fists, it soon moves to courage in his heart. What defines him more than any battle or quest is his capacity to feel, deeply, wildly, without filter. Finn is a creature of emotion before he is a creature of logic. Every joy he feels lights up the world. Every heartbreak shakes the ground he walks on. In him, Adventure Time found its most human truth, that growing up means learning not just how to fight monsters, but how to live with pain. The heart that once fueled his heroism soon becomes his greatest vulnerability. As Finn begins to love, to lose, and to question the world, he discovers that the same sensitivity that makes him brave also makes him breakable. He loves fiercely, not just romantically, but in the way he connects to people, to places, to moments. Every friendship for him is sacred, every goodbye a small ending. The very openness that makes him kind also leaves him exposed. And the first time his heart breaks, it breaks completely. Finn's first experiences of love are innocent and absolute. He gives everything: attention, hope, devotion, believing that love, like heroism, is simple and pure. But love, like everything else in Oo, is complicated. It doesn't always return in the way you expect, and it doesn't always mean what you think it does. Finn's early heartbreaks hit him hard because they challenge his deepest assumption that goodness guarantees reward. He has done nothing wrong, yet he hurts. For someone whose world was once divided neatly into cause and effect, this feels like betrayal. He starts to understand that pain is not punishment, it's transformation. Every broken heart opens him a little more. The ache he feels isn't just loss, it's expansion. His heart, once simple and solid, begins to hold contradictions, joy and grief, hope and disappointment, love and loneliness. Finn's emotional life becomes a map of Oo itself. Fractured, beautiful, unpredictable, full of ruins and new growth. The people around Finn reflect and shape this process. Jake comforts him without judgment, never mocking his feelings, never trying to fix them. Jake knows that pain, like sleep, must run its course. Princess Bubblegum, the first to truly challenge Finn's ideas of love, teaches him that affection and alignment aren't the same thing, that you can love someone and still not belong with them. Flame Princess teaches him about intensity and impermanence, that passion can illuminate and destroy at once. Each connection reshapes him. Each heartbreak pulls him closer to empathy. In these moments of emotional turmoil, Finn's heroic instincts collide with his feelings. He wants to fix his pain the same way he fixes everything, through action, through bravery, through some gesture that restores balance. But emotional wounds don't yield to force. The more he tries to solve his feelings, the deeper they cut. And slowly, he realizes that the heart cannot be healed by battle. It can only be healed by patience. This is where Finn's humanity matures. He learns to sit with hurt, to let it breathe instead of silencing it. That act, simple, quiet, almost invisible, marks one of the greatest transformations in his journey. The boy who once leapt into every problem now learns to pause. His bravery takes a new form. Not the courage to attack, but the courage to feel. Heartbreak, for Finn, becomes a mirror. It forces him to see himself, his flaws, his needs, his capacity for both light and shadow. He begins to understand that love is not a rescue mission. It's a practice, a rhythm, a balance between giving and receiving. The pain of losing what he loves teaches him tenderness. It softens his judgments. It turns him into someone who no longer wants to conquer hearts, but to understand them. As Finn grows older, this emotional sensitivity expands beyond romance. He begins to feel deeply for everyone, his friends, strangers, even enemies. His empathy, once confined to those he adored, spreads like light through his whole being. He cries easily, forgives easily, laughs easily. He carries sorrow the way Jake carries calm, as something that hums inside him but never defines him. The same heart that once shattered now becomes a vessel for compassion. Finn's pain also changes how he sees Oo. Where once he saw only adventure and danger, he now sees stories, every being carrying their own quiet ache. He notices loneliness in the candy people, fear in the monsters, yearning in those he once called villains. This awareness doesn't paralyze him, it humbles him. He begins to realize that goodness is not about fighting evil, but about easing suffering. wherever it hides. His heart, once focused on heroism, now beats for understanding. One of the most powerful aspects of Finn's emotional journey is that it doesn't erase his optimism. Even after everything he endures, rejection, confusion, loss, he never becomes cynical. His hope changes shape, but it never dies. It becomes quieter, gentler, grounded in experience rather than fantasy. The boy who once believed in fairy tale endings now believes in small human moments, a friend's laughter, a shared meal, a sunrise after a long night. That's the mark of a heart that has healed without closing. Every time Finn breaks, he becomes more whole. His pain stretches his capacity to love. The first heartbreak teaches him vulnerability. The second teaches him forgiveness. The third teaches him acceptance. Each one strips away illusion, leaving him softer, truer, more aware. By the time he reaches adulthood, Finn has become something rare, someone who loves without needing guarantees. He loves for the sake of it, freely, bravely, without fear of loss. This transformation, from needing love to being love, defines his later years. His heart no longer seeks completion in others. It finds peace in connection itself. He understands that people enter and leave, our lives like seasons, that pain is part of the rhythm of living. His kindness no longer depends on outcome. It's constant, steady, unconditional. Jake's presence continues to shape that wisdom. Where Finn's emotions once crashed like waves, Jake teaches him to float. Through their friendship, Finn learns that love doesn't always have to burn. Sometimes it can simply be. Their bond, tested by distance and death, becomes proof that love doesn't require permanence to endure. It's enough to share a moment deeply, to be present when it matters, to laugh together in the face of the unknown. Finn's heart, the same heart that once broke so easily, becomes his greatest strength. It gives him empathy when others choose anger, peace when others choose revenge, hope when others see ruin. He learns that sensitivity is not weakness, but wisdom. To feel is to live fully. To hurt is to grow. To forgive is to become free. By the end of his journey, Finn no longer tries to avoid heartbreak. He welcomes it as proof that he's still alive, still open, still capable of love. He carries his scars not as burdens, but as reminders that he has known beauty, that he has cared, that he has given himself completely to the world. The boy who once saw love as reward now understands it as truth, the quiet force that connects all things. His heart, once fragile, becomes vast. It no longer fears breaking, because it knows it can always heal. And that is Finn's greatest act of heroism. Not slaying monsters or saving kingdoms, but keeping his heart open again and again, in a world that often tries to close it. Finn's story is inseparable from the world around him. He doesn't just live in Oo, he reflects it. Every part of him, from his wild curiosity to his aching heart, mirrors the strange, beautiful contradictions of the land he calls home. To understand Finn is to understand Oo itself, a world built on ruins and rebirth, chaos and tenderness, laughter and silence. And in that reflection, we see something profound, that Finn's growth isn't just personal, it's cosmic. He is the living embodiment of how Oo changes, heals and remembers. From the beginning, Finn's energy feels like a counterpoint to the world's past. Oo is a place born from destruction, a broken civilization reborn through magic, mutation and whimsy. Underneath its bright colours lies the shadow of something old and lost. Yet out of that loss, Finn emerges, a human, one of the last of his kind, running through the forests barefoot and laughing. He is the echo of humanity's past, but also its possibility. Where the old world fell through greed and conflict, Finn's world rises through friendship and love. He carries both legacies in him, the innocence of a new dawn and the wisdom of an ancient wound. As he grows, Finn becomes a mirror for every age of Oo's history. In his youth, he reflects the wild magic of the world, unpredictable, impulsive, full of life. He's in harmony with the absurdity around him, charging into danger with a grin, as if the universe itself were made for play. His laughter, his wonder, his curiosity, all of it feels like Oo celebrating its own rebirth through him. He is the childlike heart of a world rediscovering itself. But Oo, like Finn, changes. Its light fades and darkens. Its past begins to resurface. Strange relics, old ghosts, buried memories, they rise, demanding to be understood. And as the world confronts its scars, so does Finn. His innocence gives way to introspection, his bright optimism tempered by awareness. He starts to see that Oo's beauty is inseparable from its pain, that its joy exists precisely because it knows what sorrow is. The more he learns about the land's history, the more he feels that same duality inside himself. The coexistence of creation and loss. There's something poetic about the fact that Finn is human in a world where humans have almost vanished. His existence alone is a contradiction, a living reminder of what came before, but also a symbol of what might come after. In that way, Finn embodies both memory and hope. Oo, too, is built on contradictions, a place where ruins become playgrounds, where monsters become friends, where endings always circle back into beginnings. Finn mirrors this perfectly. His story is never linear. It loops and folds, full of transformation. Finn's moral evolution is also a reflection of Oo's moral complexity. Early on, he believes in simple binaries, heroes and villains, light and dark. But Oo refuses to play by those rules. It's full of grey areas, of people who are both kind and cruel, of creatures who hurt because they're hurting. Every time Finn looks deeper into the world, he sees himself reflected back in its contradictions. The more he understands others, the more he understands himself. This mirroring becomes clearest in his encounters with Oo's great forces, beings like Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, the Ice King, and even Golb. Each of them represents something Finn must face within himself. Bubblegum's relentless control forces him to confront his own need to define goodness. Marceline's loneliness mirrors his fear of being alone. The Ice King's madness reveals what happens when love turns into obsession. Even Golb, the embodiment of chaos and destruction, becomes a reflection of Finn's most difficult lesson. That chaos is not evil, it's part of creation's balance. Oo teaches Finn the same lesson he teaches it, that everything, even darkness, belongs. Oo itself changes, shape around Finn as if responding to his growth. When he is young, it feels small, bright, and contained, a playground. As he matures, it expands, revealing hidden histories, deeper layers, and older pain. The world seems to age alongside him, becoming more mysterious, more honest, more fragile. His emotional evolution and Oo's physical evolution are synchronized, two halves of one great heartbeat. When Finn becomes gentler, Oo feels gentler. When he grows uncertain, Oo grows strange. When he learns acceptance, the world seems to breathe easier. Finn also mirrors Oo in the way he transforms through connection. The land is defined by its relationships, kingdoms interwoven, species coexisting, magic entangling science. Nothing in Oo exists in isolation, and neither does Finn. Every person he meets adds something to his being. The fire of Flame Princess, the intellect of Bubblegum, the steadiness of Jake, the melancholy of Marceline, they all become parts of him, just as Ooh is made of countless fragments that somehow fit together. Finn becomes a mosaic of everyone he's loved and learned from. His empathy is the same as Ooh's resilience. Both have the ability to absorb chaos and turn it into meaning. The land heals through time and transformation. Finn heals through love and forgiveness. When he forgives others and himself, he restores the same harmony that Ooh constantly seeks. His heart becomes the emotional geography of the world, unpredictable, weathered, and full of hidden beauty. Finn's later serenity mirrors Ooh's cyclical peace. After all the battles and heartbreaks, there comes a quiet balance, the sense that life, though messy, is still whole. The same energy that once drove him to fight now allows him to rest, just as the once chaotic world finds stillness after its storms. His inner calm becomes the world's calm. The boy who once wanted to fix everything learns that the universe was never broken, only misunderstood. This mirroring reaches its most intimate expression in the bond between Finn and nature. He finds peace not in castles or quests, but in simple landscapes, a field, a forest, a sunrise. These places remind him of his place in the grand pattern where nothing is wasted and everything transforms. He begins to see himself not as separate from Ooh, but as one of its voices. His heart beats with its rhythm, his laughter becomes its wind, his silence becomes its soil. By the end of his journey, Finn no longer sees Ooh as his playground or his mission. He sees it as his reflection, imperfect, resilient, endlessly alive. Its ruins no longer frighten him, its mysteries no longer demand answers. He accepts that Ooh, like himself, is both damaged and divine. And in that acceptance, he finds belonging, not as a hero standing above the world, but as a soul standing within it. Finn's reflection of Ooh reveals something essential about the series as a whole. Adventure Time has always been a meditation on coexistence between magic and reason, life and decay, joy and grief. Finn embodies that coexistence. He begins as a symbol of purity and ends as a symbol of wholeness. Through him, we see that the purpose of a world, or a person, is not to stay innocent, but to become whole, to embrace every piece of themselves without rejection. The boy who wanted to be good becomes the man who understands that goodness is not a light separate from shadow, but a light that includes it. The hero becomes the mirror becomes the world. And somewhere, under a golden sky, Ooh breathes, and Finn breathes with it, each reflecting the other's infinite, imperfect grace. Every hero's story, no matter how full of laughter or friendship, eventually reaches the quiet space of loneliness. For Finn, that space arrives not as a sudden collapse, but as a slow realization. The awareness that no matter how many friends he has, no matter how often he saves the day, there's a part of him that stands apart from everyone else. It's not a sadness that can be fixed. It's the natural solitude that comes with growing up, with learning that the world doesn't always move at the same rhythm as your heart. In the early days, Finn never feels alone. He and Jake are inseparable, two halves of one chaotic spirit. The tree fort is their sanctuary, the centre of a world that seems endless and alive. Every adventure begins and ends with laughter, but time has a way of thinning even the thickest bonds. Jake begins to change, to love differently, to focus on his family. The rhythm of life shifts, the spaces between adventures grow longer. Finn doesn't lose Jake, but he begins to realize that life moves even when you're not holding on to it. That's when the first shade of loneliness settles in. Not abandonment, not rejection, just the quiet recognition that everything changes. Finn begins to spend more time wandering on his own. The forests feel larger, the nights longer. The excitement of adventure remains, but it hums with a softer tone, curiosity mixed with contemplation. He's no longer just exploring ooh, he's exploring himself. Loneliness, for Finn, isn't just physical distance. It's emotional distance too. He starts to see that the people around him, no matter how close, have their own worlds he can't fully enter. Princess Bubblegum's mind is a labyrinth of duty and regret. Marceline's heart is buried under centuries of memory. Even Jake, his brother in all but blood, holds dreams Finn can't quite touch. For someone who once believed that love could conquer everything, this realization stings. It's the quiet ache of realizing that empathy has limits, that even the most open heart can't always understand another's pain. But there's beauty in that loneliness too. It teaches Finn to listen differently. When you're surrounded by silence, you start to hear the small things, the wind through the trees, the rhythm of your own breathing, the voice of the world itself. Solitude, at first frightening, becomes his teacher. It shows him that connection doesn't always mean closeness. You can love people deeply without needing to be with them all the time. You can be alone without being empty. This lesson comes slowly. There are nights when Finn feels the weight of absence, Jake's laughter echoing in his memory, the warmth of companionship fading into the coolness of quiet. But there are also mornings when he wakes to sunlight filtering through leaves, and for a moment that quiet feels like peace. He begins to understand that solitude isn't a punishment. It's a space where love breathes, where reflection can grow. The loneliness of a hero is inevitable because heroism itself is isolating. Finn's empathy makes him see too much, feel too much. He carries the stories of others inside him, and sometimes those stories contradict each other. The more he learns, the harder it becomes to find simple comfort. He knows that every joy carries a shadow, that every peace is temporary. This knowledge doesn't make him bitter, but it does make him quiet. He speaks less, listens more. His energy shifts from outward fire to inward light. He begins to notice that even his own image, the hero everyone admires, is part of his solitude. People see his courage, his victories, his kindness, but few see his doubts, his longing, his exhaustion. It's a subtle kind of loneliness, being loved for your strength when you most need to be seen in your weakness. Finn bears it without complaint. He understands that people need hope, and if his light helps them, that's enough. But inside, he carries the awareness that even heroes need to rest, even heroes need to be held. Jake, as always, helps him see the gentle side of loneliness. When Jake eventually grows older and their paths diverge, Finn learns that love doesn't vanish with distance, it changes form. The bond remains, but it becomes something quieter, more spiritual. Finn starts to find Jake's presence not just in memories, but in the calmness of his own heart. The silence that used to hurt begins to feel sacred. It's the echo of a friendship that doesn't need words to exist. As Finn matures, he begins to realize that loneliness isn't the opposite of love, it's part of it. To love deeply is to accept separation. Every connection in Oo is temporary, every friendship part of a larger rhythm. He starts to see that holding on too tightly can distort love, turn it into fear. True connection, he learns, requires letting people go, trusting that what you shared will still exist, even apart. This acceptance transforms his solitude into serenity. He no longer chases constant company to fill the silence. He starts to seek it. His long walks across the wilderness aren't escapes, they're meditations. The quiet becomes his companion. He begins to notice how alive it is, full of soft noises, unseen movement, the pulse of nature. In the spaces where no one else is, Finn finally meets himself. The lonely hero becomes the peaceful wanderer. He doesn't need the applause of others, the validation of being needed. He doesn't even need to be the hero anymore. His purpose shifts from saving others to understanding them, and in turn, understanding himself. The emptiness that once frightened him becomes a kind of fullness. The silence around him no longer feels like absence, but presence. The presence of everything he's loved, everything he's lost, everything that still lives inside him. There's a quiet irony in Finn's evolution. The boy who was once never alone becomes the man who is most himself in solitude. But it's not sadness, it's completion. His loneliness is no longer a wound. It's a space for connection with the world itself. He starts to feel the same companionship from the stars, the rivers, the wind. Oo is with him in every step, whispering softly that he's never really alone. Through that loneliness, Finn achieves the kind of maturity few heroes ever reach. He understands that togetherness and separation are part of the same cycle, like breathing in and out. Jake taught him that everything stretches, and so does love. Finn learns that bonds aren't measured by proximity, but by presence, the way someone lives inside you even when they're far away. So he walks, sometimes alone, sometimes alongside others, carrying that quiet wisdom in his chest. The loneliness that once ached now hums softly like a memory. It no longer asks to be cured. It simply is, a companion, a teacher, a mirror of the self. In that stillness, Finn becomes more than the hero of Oo. He becomes its witness. And in witnessing, he fulfills the truest purpose of all, to love the world enough to walk through it, even when no one else can follow. For most of his life, Finn believed that caring for others was the purest form of goodness. From the moment he could pick up a sword, he fought to protect anyone who needed help. Compassion, to him, was action, rushing into danger, rescuing the lost, mending what was broken. But as Finn grows older, compassion begins to take on a different meaning. It becomes heavier, quieter, and more complicated. What once felt like light now feels like gravity. The weight of compassion doesn't come from pity or guilt. It comes from awareness. Finn starts to see the hidden suffering that fills Oo, not just the kind that monsters cause, but the kind that lives inside people. He notices the pain in Princess Bubblegum's careful control, the sorrow beneath Marceline's songs, the confusion in the Ice King's rambling loneliness. He realizes that almost everyone he loves carries a sadness that he can't fix, and that realization changes him. At first, he tries to carry everyone's pain as if it were his own. It's instinctual. The hero in him still believes that caring means solving. But the deeper he dives into people's hearts, the more he sees how fragile they are, how personal their struggles can be. Compassion becomes a paradox. The more he understands others, the more powerless he sometimes feels. His empathy, once a gift, now feels like a burden. He can feel the world's ache pressing down on him, and he doesn't know where to put it. There are moments when that compassion almost breaks him. He feels the unfairness of it all, how good people suffer, how kindness isn't always enough, how the world's pain doesn't pause even when he gives everything. For a while, this leaves him restless. He can't save everyone, but he can't stop caring. The very trait that made him a hero now threatens to drown him in helplessness. He feels the exhaustion that comes from trying to hold too much. Jake, ever the quiet guide, helps him see the truth. That compassion isn't about carrying pain, it's about understanding it. You can't hold everything, buddy, Jake might say, and Finn would know he's right. Compassion, he learns, doesn't mean taking on the world's sorrow. It means seeing it and choosing to love the world anyway. It's not about fixing people. It's about being kind enough to let them find their own way. This lesson is subtle, but it changes Finn deeply. He begins to approach others with gentler eyes. Instead of trying to save them, he listens. Instead of forcing solutions, he offers presence. He learns that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to simply stand beside someone in their pain, without trying to erase it. His compassion shifts from movement to stillness, from control to humility. But even that gentler form of compassion carries weight. To be open-hearted in a world that often wounds you requires strength. Finn begins to understand why so many people build walls. It's easier not to feel. It's easier to protect yourself. Yet he can't do that. It's not in his nature. His heart, once small and sure, has stretched like Jake's body, wide enough to hold contradictions, wide enough to hold the whole of Ooh. But holding it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Compassion, he realizes, is a kind of ache that never fully fades. He starts to notice how the world reflects this truth back at him. The sky doesn't refuse to rain just because it's tired. The earth doesn't stop blooming after loss. Nature keeps giving, even when it breaks. Finn finds comfort in that rhythm. Maybe compassion isn't about carrying suffering, but participating in it, being part of the great balance of joy and pain, life and decay. Maybe to care deeply is to accept that you'll be hurt again and again and love anyway. Over time, Finn's compassion becomes less reactive and more wise. He learns to see the difference between helping and interfering. He doesn't rush into every crisis anymore. Sometimes he steps back, watching, trusting that others can find their own answers. This isn't apathy, it's respect. True compassion, he learns, honors the freedom of others. It's not about rescuing them from their paths, but walking beside them, even if those paths are painful. This understanding also transforms how Finn relates to himself. He starts to extend the same compassion inward. He stops expecting himself to always be strong, always be right. When he fails, he forgives himself. When he feels lost, he sits with it instead of running from it. His empathy for others helps him see that he deserves that same gentleness. It's one of the hardest lessons, to turn love inward without shame. But when he finally does, it completes him. Finn's compassion also gives him a new relationship with the world's brokenness. Once, he saw Ooh's chaos as something to battle. Now, he sees it as part of the same song that makes life beautiful. He can walk through ruins and feel peace because he knows they're part of the story too. He can look at people's flaws and see their humanity instead of their failure. The weight he carries is no longer heavy with despair, it's full of gratitude. Every act of compassion, no matter how small, connects him more deeply to everything. When he comforts someone, he's comforting a part of himself. When he forgives, he heals a piece of the world. He realizes that compassion isn't something you give, it's something you are. It flows through you when you stop resisting the truth that everything is connected. Still, there are moments when the weight feels too much. Finn sometimes sits under the stars, feeling the ache of all he's seen. But even in that ache, there's peace. He's learned that pain isn't the enemy of compassion, it's its proof. To feel the world's sorrow is to be part of it. To carry it gently is to love it fully. As he grows older, Finn's compassion becomes quiet and radiant. He doesn't need to shout his love or prove his care. It's in the way he moves, the way he listens, the way he lets others be themselves. He doesn't try to save Oo anymore. He belongs to it. His heart beats in rhythm with its fragile, enduring beauty. The boy who once believed that compassion meant fighting has become the man who understands that compassion means staying open, staying kind, staying present, even when it hurts. That is the weight he carries, and the grace he lives by. There comes a point in every journey when the hero stops looking outward for wisdom and begins to find it inside. For Finn, that moment arrives quietly, not through a grand revelation or a mystical prophecy, but through living, through mistakes, through listening. He begins to realize that the lessons he spent years chasing in others have been taking root in him all along. The student, without even noticing, has become the teacher. But Finn's teaching doesn't look like teaching. He doesn't lecture, doesn't instruct, doesn't carry himself as a sage. His wisdom appears in the way he moves through the world, the way he reacts, the way he forgives. Every lesson he's ever learned, from Jake, from heartbreak, from failure, from silence, becomes part of how he exists. That existence itself becomes his gift to Oo. He doesn't teach with words. He teaches by being. When he was younger, Finn saw learning as something to collect, a quest for answers. He believed that if he learnt enough, he could master life the way he mastered a sword. But as he grows older, he understands that knowledge isn't a weapon or a shield. It's a rhythm. You don't hold it, you move with it. The more he releases control, the clearer his insights become. What once felt like confusion now feels like mystery, and mystery no longer frightens him, it nourishes him. Jake remains the foundation of Finn's wisdom, his first teacher, his mirror, his reminder to slow down and breathe. But over time, their roles begin to shift. Jake, ever humble, starts to look to Finn with a kind of quiet respect. He sees in him the evolution of all the lessons they once laughed about. Finn has internalized Jake's calm, but added his own depth to it. Where Jake's wisdom was instinctual, Finn's is earned. It's the difference between being born wise and becoming wise through effort. This transformation shows most clearly in how Finn approaches conflict. The boy who once charged into danger now pauses. He asks questions. He looks for the story behind the fight. He's no longer satisfied with winning. He wants to understand. His compassion, once impulsive, now has discernment. He sees that kindness without understanding can sometimes cause harm. So he listens to people, to the land, to his own heart. His pauses become his most powerful actions. In those moments, he starts to teach others without meaning to. People come to him not for solutions, but for presence. They can feel in him a kind of peace that isn't loud but steady, like the hum of the earth. Even those who once saw him as a simple adventurer begin to sense something deeper, a quiet authority, born not from power, but from humility. Finn never asks to lead, yet people naturally follow him. His calm becomes contagious. The teacher within doesn't seek students. It draws them through example. Finn's growth becomes a living lesson in how to live with open hands, how to love, lose, forgive, and keep going. Those who spend time around him begin to notice their own shifts. Less fear, more patience, softer eyes. The energy he radiates becomes a kind of mirror, reflecting back to others the gentleness they forgot they had. Still, Finn resists thinking of himself as wise. He knows how easily pride can sneak in, how teaching can become another form of ego. He remembers how certain he used to be, how he mistook righteousness for truth. Now, whenever someone praises his insight, he just smiles and says something simple, because he knows the truth of wisdom is humility. The more you learn, the more you understand how little you know. That awareness, rather than discouraging him, keeps him kind. One of the greatest things Finn learns is that wisdom doesn't mean being above emotion. It means being intimate with it. He doesn't suppress his joy or his sadness. He feels them both fully and lets them pass. His wisdom isn't cold detachment, it's warm presence. He allows himself to cry, to laugh, to be uncertain, because he's learned that truth lives in those raw, fleeting moments. He teaches others that wisdom isn't about control, it's about honesty. Through the teacher within, Finn begins to understand Jake's old truth in a new way. That living well isn't about doing extraordinary things, but about doing ordinary things with peace. He learns to see depth in simplicity, in cooking breakfast, walking in silence, helping a stranger without needing thanks. He starts to notice how life itself is always teaching if you're quiet enough to listen. The wind, the river, the stars, they all echo the same lesson. Stay open, stay kind, stay real. What makes Finn's inner teacher so special is that it isn't rooted in perfection. He's not free of mistakes. He still stumbles, still doubts himself. But now, those moments no longer feel like failures. They're part of the teaching. Every mistake becomes a doorway to understanding. He learns that falling short doesn't cancel what you've learned, it deepens it. It teaches compassion for others who stumble too. His most important lesson, the one he embodies without even realizing it, is that wisdom and innocence can coexist. Even as he grows older, even as his knowledge expands, he never loses his ability to play, to laugh, to wonder. The world remains magical to him, not because it's simple, but because it's endlessly complex. That childlike joy, tempered by experience, becomes his signature, a reminder that growing wise doesn't mean growing heavy. You can know sorrow and still choose delight. As Finn moves through his later years, this quiet teaching becomes the undercurrent of his life. He doesn't seek disciples, but changes subtly around him. Conflicts resolve more easily. People seem gentler. The air feels lighter. It's as if the peace he's cultivated inside himself ripples outward, touching everything it meets. His presence has become part of the balance of the world, not through force, but through being. And perhaps that's the greatest teaching of all, that peace isn't something you spread by preaching. It's something that spreads by example. The teacher within doesn't shout, doesn't argue, it simply lives. Finn's existence becomes a story about how learning never ends, how even the smallest act of kindness teaches the world something new. In the quiet moments, when he sits beneath the stars, when he listens to the soft breathing of Finn feels that teaching within him hum like a heartbeat. It's not a lesson, he can explain. It's just a knowing that every moment is both student and teacher, that every life is both learner and guide. He smiles at the thought, not because he's proud, but because he finally understands what Jake meant all along, that the secret to wisdom isn't knowing everything. It's trusting that life itself knows what it's doing. And so, without ever trying, the boy who wanted to be good has become the man who shows others what goodness looks like when it grows up. Every hero carries a symbol, something that binds their story together, something that reveals who they are beneath the armor. For Finn, that symbol has always been the sword. From the first time he picked one up, it felt like an extension of himself, a way to shape the world, to defend it, to understand it. The sword became his language, his way of expressing courage and justice. But as he grows older, that blade becomes more than a tool. It becomes a mirror. Through it, Finn learns not only what it means to fight, but what it means to grow. The sword, like Finn, changes over time. Each new one he wields reflects a different stage of his life, each blade carrying its own story, its own scars. Some are sharp and clean, others strange and organic, others born from himself. Every one of them teaches him something. The swords aren't just weapons, they're teachers made of steel and memory. They record his triumphs, his failures, his fears, his transformations. Through them, we can trace the map of his soul. In the beginning, the sword is a child's fantasy. To young Finn, it represents power, bravery, and righteousness. It's the object that separates heroes from ordinary people. With a sword in his hand, he feels invincible, like he's fulfilling a destiny written in the stars. The sword is both comfort and identity, the proof that he's good, that he's strong, that he belongs. But even then, the truth is quietly waiting for him. A sword doesn't create a hero. It only reveals the person who wields it. As Finn matures, he begins to understand that the sword cuts both ways, outward and inward. Every time he swings it to protect someone, he also risks wounding something within himself. Violence, even when righteous, leaves marks. The sound of steel becomes a kind of echo that lingers long after battle. There's guilt in it and confusion. Sometimes, after a fight, he looks at the sword and wonders who it's really serving, the world or his own need to feel worthy. This is where Finn's relationship with the sword begins to evolve from instinct to introspection. He starts to question his reliance on it. Why does he always reach for the blade first? Is it courage or fear of inaction? Is he protecting others or protecting his image of himself? These questions don't come easily. They shake the foundation of the identity he's built. But he doesn't run from them. He listens. He begins to see that the sword has always been both his companion and his test, a constant reminder that strength without understanding can cause harm. In time, Finn learns that the sword is not the source of his power, it's a reflection of it. When he is angry, the blade feels heavy, unwieldy. When he is clear, it feels like an extension of his hand. The sword mirrors his inner state, teaching him that the real battle is never against monsters or villains. It's against ignorance, against ego, against the parts of himself that confuse force with purpose. The sword becomes his meditation. Every swing, every block, every nicked edge becomes a lesson in presence. There's something sacred in the way Finn begins to handle his weapon in later years. He no longer brandishes it with bravado. He moves slower with thought. The sword isn't a toy anymore. It's a companion in silence. He sharpens it not to prepare for war, but to reflect. The process becomes almost ritualistic, a moment of communion between the child who picked up his first blade and the man who now understands what that act meant. The sword connects all his selves. Jake's influence, once again, grounds him. Jake was never obsessed with weapons. He always understood that strength wasn't in the hand, but in the heart. Finn, through years of friendship, begins to live that truth. His reliance on the sword fades. He doesn't discard it, he simply stops needing it. His hands, once restless for battle, now prefer to build, to hold, to create the sword that once defined him becomes a symbol of what he's learned to transcend. Yet Finn never rejects his past. He doesn't see his younger self's love for the sword as foolish. He understands that it was necessary, a stage of learning, a way to express courage before he could understand it more deeply. The sword was his training ground, the physical form of his inner search for meaning. Without it, he might never have found the patience and clarity that define him now. Growth, he learns, doesn't come from erasing your old self, but from integrating it. In his maturity, Finn begins to see the sword as a story about transformation. He remembers the first time he swung one, full of excitement and innocence. He remembers the times he used it in anger, the times he regretted it, the times he saved lives with it. All those moments coexist inside him, folded together. The sword has always been a mirror of the heart, sometimes shining, sometimes cracked, but always honest. Eventually, there comes a time when Finn lays his sword down, not out of defeat, but completion. The gesture feels like exhaling after a lifetime of holding breath. He looks at the weapon that once defined his entire being and feels no attachment, no resentment, just gratitude. The sword gave him something he couldn't have learned any other way. That power without peace is empty, and peace without power is fragile. The two must balance, like the blade itself. When Finn walks away from the sword, he doesn't lose his strength, he redefines it. His courage is no longer tied to metal or might. It lives in his choices, in his kindness, in the way he faces the unknown with open eyes. The world still offers battles, but now he chooses which ones are worth fighting. Some he meets with words, others with silence. Sometimes the most heroic thing he does is not to draw the blade at all. In that choice, the choice to let go of the sword, Finn transcends the old idea of heroism. The boy, who once swung wildly at every shadow, has become a man who knows that real power doesn't come from the ability to strike, but from the strength to refrain. The sword remains, rusting gently in the grass, not as a relic of violence, but as a monument to growth. The child and the sword were never separate. The blade was his teacher, and he its student, until they switched roles, until the child grew wise enough to see that every edge, no matter how sharp, dulls without purpose. The sword taught him courage, and he taught it meaning. And now, when Finn looks down at his reflection in its weathered steel, he doesn't see the warrior of U. He sees a person, whole, calm, and free. There comes a time when every hero must face the ghosts they've made, not the monsters they've fought, but the memories of anger, shame, and regret that linger long after the battles are done. For Finn, this moment doesn't arrive with fire or thunder. It arrives with quiet, the kind of silence that follows years of reflection. He has learned courage, love, patience, and restraint. But forgiveness, real forgiveness, remains the hardest thing of all. Because it isn't just about others, it's about himself. Forgiveness begins for Finn in fragments. At first, it's the small things. Forgiving Jake when he's late. Forgiving friends when they let him down. Forgiving strangers who act from fear instead of malice. These are simple, instinctive acts, the kind that come from kindness, not yet from deep understanding. But beneath those gestures, larger questions wait. How do you forgive someone who's truly hurt you? How do you forgive yourself for what you couldn't prevent, for what you broke in trying to help? These are the questions that linger when the world has gone quiet and the sword is laid down. Finn's early understanding of forgiveness is like his early understanding of heroism, idealized and clean. He believes that forgiving means forgetting, that it means releasing the pain completely. But life teaches him otherwise. Forgiveness, he learns, isn't erasure, it's endurance. It's choosing to live alongside what happened without letting it define you. It's remembering without resentment. And that kind of forgiveness takes time, more time than any adventure he's ever faced. His journey toward forgiveness often begins with empathy. The boy who once saw the world in black and white now sees the stories behind people's actions. He looks at those who wronged him and begins to understand that pain makes people do strange things. Even those who hurt others are often lost or afraid. Seeing this doesn't excuse their actions, but it makes hatred impossible. He can't hold anger against someone when he understands their suffering. Compassion starts to dissolve the boundaries between victim and foe. But empathy alone isn't enough. Finn learns that forgiveness also requires courage, the courage to let go of what your pain gives you. Anger, after all, can feel safe. It gives shape to hurt, turns chaos into focus. Letting it go can feel like losing part of yourself. Finn resists it at first, holding on to the righteousness of being wronged. But as time passes, he sees that anger is a cage. It protects nothing. It only isolates. The freedom he seeks lies not in punishment, but in release. Forgiving others is difficult, but forgiving himself is even harder. There are moments in his past that still weigh on him. Mistakes he made in the name of doing good. Choices that hurt people despite his intentions. For a long time, he carries them like invisible stones. No one sees the burden, but it's there, slowing his steps. Every time he thinks he's moved on, he finds another memory tucked away, another "what if" whispering in his mind. The hardest truth he learns is that you can't heal what you refuse to face. So Finn begins the slow work of looking inward. It's uncomfortable. He sees the versions of himself that he'd rather forget. The impulsive boy, the angry teenager, the stubborn young man who thought he always knew what was right. But instead of hating those versions, he starts to thank them. They were trying, just like he was. They made mistakes because they were learning. Every error was a lesson, every regret a seed. When he finally accepts that, the shame begins to fade. Self-forgiveness, he realizes, is not an act of pride. It's an act of compassion. Jake's influence echoes through this process too. Jake never held grudges, never carried guilt longer than a moment. He taught Finn by example that life is too short and too beautiful to waste on bitterness. When Finn thinks about Jake's calm acceptance, he begins to see forgiveness not as surrender, but as understanding. To forgive is to see clearly, to see the whole picture without clinging to one frame. It's realizing that everyone, including yourself, is doing the best they can with what they know. Finn's forgiveness extends beyond people. He learns to forgive the world itself for its chaos, its randomness, its cruelty. As a child, he used to take the world's pain personally, as if every disaster or heartbreak were a failure on his part. But as he matures, he begins to see that suffering is woven into the fabric of existence. It's not punishment, it's part of being alive. Forgiving the world doesn't mean ignoring its pain. It means accepting its imperfection. It means saying, even this belongs. Through this lens, even his deepest wounds start to feel sacred. The heartbreaks, the betrayals, the moments of doubt, they're all part of the story that made him who he is. Forgiveness transforms those memories from sources of pain into sources of wisdom. He no longer tries to rewrite them. He lets them stand as they are, knowing that peace doesn't come from erasing the past, but from making peace with it. This transformation changes how Finn moves through life. He no longer reacts to harm with vengeance or blame. When people wrong him, he pauses. He feels the hurt, acknowledges it, and then lets it pass. Not because it doesn't matter, but because he refuses to carry it any longer than he has to. Forgiveness, for him, becomes a kind of freedom, the ability to keep moving without dragging the weight of resentment behind him. In a world like Ooh, where the scars of ancient wars and personal feuds still shape the present, Finn's forgiveness becomes revolutionary. It's not loud or dramatic. It's gentle, quiet, consistent. Every act of forgiveness ripples outward. People around him feel it, even if they can't name it. His peace softens others. His calm gives permission for others to heal. Without meaning to, Finn becomes the still point in a world that never stops turning. And yet, forgiveness doesn't make him naive. He doesn't forget what hurt him, and he doesn't excuse cruelty. What changes is how he holds those truths. Forgiveness isn't pretending that everything is fine. It's knowing that even when it isn't, you can still choose love over hate. It's the balance between remembering and releasing, between justice and mercy. Finn doesn't stop feeling anger. He simply stops letting it lead. By the time he reaches full maturity, forgiveness has become the quiet core of his philosophy. It's in the way he looks at people, the way he smiles even after loss, the way he still believes in the goodness of things. The boy who once fought to destroy evil now lives to understand it. The man who once carried guilt now walks lightly, knowing that being human means making peace with imperfection. Forgiveness, in the sins.com end, gives Finn back to himself. It allows him to feel whole, not because everything is perfect, but because he no longer resists what is. The past, once full of sharp edges, softens. The faces of those he's forgiven, and of the boy he once was, blur into one truth. Love was always there, even beneath the pain. He understands now that forgiveness isn't an act of weakness. It's the final act of strength, the courage to stop fighting, to open your heart, and to let the world back in. And in that moment of release, Finn's heart feels light again, like the first morning after a long storm. The air tastes new, the sky feels endless, and somewhere deep inside, he knows that he's finally free. Growing up in U was never like growing up anywhere else. Time there moves in spirals, not lines. Days fold into centuries, people transform, and memories linger like ghosts. But even in a world of magic and endless possibility, Finn cannot escape the simplest truth of all. He is growing up, slowly, quietly, inevitably. The boy who once shouted battle cries across the Candy Kingdom now sits under the same sky, softer, quieter, watching the clouds drift. And in that stillness, he realizes that growing up isn't something that happens to you. It's something you learn to accept. When he was young, Finn believed that maturity was a kind of loss. To grow up meant to lose the spark, the excitement, the wonder. Adults seemed distant, distracted, weighed down by the seriousness of life. Finn feared that fate. He wanted to stay free, the boy who laughed at monsters, who raced the wind, who believed that love could fix everything. But as the years unfold, he discovers something unexpected. Growing up doesn't take those things away. It simply changes how you hold them. The dream of growing up begins with resistance. Finn tries to hold on to youth as if it were a treasure slipping through his fingers. He keeps adventuring, keeps fighting, keeps moving, hoping that motion will stop time. But no matter how fast he runs, change follows. Friends begin to drift apart. Jake finds his own rhythm of life. Even U itself seems to shift, growing quieter, gentler, less urgent. Finn feels the world slowing, and for the first time, he isn't sure how to move with it. That uncertainty is painful. Growing up means facing moments that can't be solved by strength or bravery. There are no monsters to slay, no villains to blame, only silence, memory, and self-reflection. For someone who has always defined himself by action, stillness feels like defeat. But slowly, Finn starts to see that stillness is a kind of courage too. It takes bravery to stop, to listen, to let yourself change. Jake, in his calm way, becomes the quiet guide again. Jake never feared getting older. He flowed with it. His laughter didn't fade with time. It deepened. His wisdom didn't harden. It softened. Watching Jake, Finn learns that growing up isn't about shedding who you were. It's about expanding into more of yourself. The child doesn't disappear. He simply learns to coexist with the adult. The key is not to let one silence the other. There are days when Finn feels the ache of nostalgia, a longing for the simple joy of those early adventures, for the days when the world seemed brighter and smaller. He remembers the thrill of being the hero, the innocence of his first loves, the sense that every problem could be fixed with enough courage. That ache is bittersweet, but he no longer runs from it. He learns to see nostalgia not as sorrow, but as gratitude. Missing what once was means it mattered. It means he lived deeply. As Finn grows, the nature of his dreams changes. His adventures become inward. He starts to ask quieter questions. What makes a life meaningful? What does peace feel like? What happens after the story ends? These questions don't come with easy answers, and that's the point. Growing up means learning to live without them. The world no longer needs him to be its savior. It simply needs him to be himself, present, kind, awake. One of the gentlest lessons Finn learns is that growing up isn't about becoming less emotional or less idealistic. It's about learning how to carry those emotions with balance. He still cries, still laughs, still loves deeply. But the intensity that once consumed him now coexists with calm. His emotions have grown up too. They move through him like seasons, temporary, beautiful, and necessary. He also begins to see that growing up means letting others grow too. The people he once protected no longer need his protection. They've become their own heroes. This realization stings at first. If he's not the one saving everyone, then who is he? But soon he discovers the quiet joy of simply witnessing, watching others find their own paths, their own strength. He sees that his role was never to be the center of the story, but to help others find their way through theirs. In those moments of reflection, Finn comes to understand that growing up doesn't mean losing magic. It means learning to see it in new places. When he was young, magic was in the battles, the quests, the loud victories. Now he finds it in the everyday, in the warmth of morning light, in a shared meal, in the silence after laughter. The world hasn't become less enchanted. His eyes have simply changed. He sees wonder where before he saw only action. The dream of growing up is full of contradictions. It hurts and heals at once. It gives and takes. It teaches you that every ending is also a beginning. For Finn, that realization feels like peace. He stops fighting time. He stops measuring himself against who he used to be. The boy who once defined his worth by how much he could do, now measures it by how deeply he can feel. And yet, even as he grows wiser, the child inside him never vanishes. He still loves dumb jokes, still marvels at weird creatures, still gets excited at the sight of a new adventure. The difference now is that he doesn't chase those moments to escape himself. He enjoys them as they come, fully, without needing them to last forever. He's learned that joy is beautiful precisely because it passes. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Finn dreams of the old days, running beside Jake, shouting into the wind, feeling infinite. When he wakes, he smiles. He doesn't feel loss, he feels connection. Those days are still with him, living inside the person he's become. The child he was and the adult he is aren't separate. They're one continuous song, shifting through different melodies. Growing up didn't end the music. It taught him how to listen to the silence between notes. The dream of growing up, Finn realizes, isn't a destination, it's a rhythm. You don't arrive at adulthood, you flow into it, just as you once flowed into childhood. The process never really ends. Even as an old man, he knows he'll still be learning, still be softening, still be finding new ways to love. Growth isn't something that stops when you've figured it out. It's the act of staying open to life, no matter how many times it changes shape. When he looks at the horizon now, Finn doesn't see the promise of endless adventure. He sees the quiet beauty of continuation, the soft truth that life doesn't need to be extraordinary to be sacred. Growing up, he realizes, isn't about leaving behind the dream. It's about waking up inside it. And in that awakening, Finn finds peace, not the peace of endings, but the peace of understanding that the story never truly ends. It just keeps unfolding, softer, slower, and infinitely alive. At some point, every journey stops being about searching and becomes about seeing. For Finn, this shift arrives not with a revelation, but with a deep exhale, the moment he finally stops fighting the way things are. He's spent his life seeking meaning through movement, running, exploring, fixing, loving, learning. But in the stillness of his later years, he begins to understand that what he's been chasing has always been right in front of him. Acceptance isn't a reward for effort. It's the quiet space that opens when you stop resisting the truth. Finn's acceptance doesn't come all at once. It unfolds in waves, subtle and gentle, like the tides that shape Oo's shores. The first wave comes when he realizes that not every question needs an answer. The mysteries of the universe, the nature of magic, the fate of lost worlds, the reason why things end, no longer haunt him. He used to think wisdom meant finding explanations. Now he knows that peace comes from embracing the unknown. Life, he sees, isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's a song to be heard. Some verses are loud, others faint, but all belong. This is the age when Finn stops comparing what is to what was. The ache of nostalgia that once pulled at him softens into gratitude. He no longer measures his worth by the adventures he's had or the battles he's won. The boy who once needed to prove himself has nothing left to prove. He is content just to be. That simple realization that being is enough marks the true beginning of peace. Acceptance also changes how Finn views loss. Once, he feared it, fought it, tried to prevent it at every turn. Every friend who left, every goodbye that lingered, felt like a small ending he couldn't control. But now he understands that loss isn't the opposite of love. It's part of it. Everything that ends leaves a trace, a memory, a warmth that lingers in the heart. To love something fully means accepting that it will one day change or go. The pain of that truth used to scare him. Now, it feels like proof that he's lived well. Jake's absence is the greatest test of this acceptance. There was a time when Finn couldn't imagine a world without him, when the idea of continuing alone seemed unbearable. But Jake's lessons, the ones wrapped in laughter, naps, and quiet wisdom, live on in Finn's every breath. He doesn't fill the space Jake left. He honors it. Sometimes, when the air is still, he feels Jake's spirit nearby, not as a ghost, but as a presence woven into everything. Acceptance, Finn learns, doesn't erase longing. It turns it into connection. Through this lens, Finn begins to see Oo differently. The land that once seemed chaotic and dangerous now feels balanced. The strange, the beautiful, the broken, they all fit together like pieces of the same mosaic. He realizes that Oo doesn't need fixing because it was never truly broken. It's alive, evolving, full of contradictions, just like him. The monsters and the miracles, the sorrow and the laughter, the living and the gone, all of it belongs to the same heartbeat. Acceptance means seeing that wholeness. The greatest change in Finn's heart is how he relates to himself. He forgives the versions of himself that once tried too hard, the boy who shouted too loud, the teenager who loved too fiercely, the wanderer who lost his way. He no longer cringes at his old mistakes or aches for the person he used to be. He sees them all as chapters in one story, necessary, imperfect, beautiful. He stops trying to fix himself. There's nothing left to fix. The cracks, the scars, the softness, they're what make him real. He also accepts the truth of his own limitations. He can't save everyone, and he doesn't have to. The world is vast and complex, and he's only one small part of it. But that smallness no longer feels insignificant. It feels sacred. Being a single thread in the tapestry of existence means you're part of something greater than yourself. The boy who once wanted to change the world now understands that simply existing with kindness is changing the world in ways too subtle to measure. In the age of acceptance, Finn's relationship with time transforms. He no longer rushes toward the future or clings to the past. Each day arrives like a guest, to be welcomed and released. There's no need to hold on. Every sunrise, every laugh, every quiet evening feels complete in itself. He finds joy in the smallest things, in the sound of rain, in the rustle of leaves, in the presence of people who come and go like seasons. His peace isn't built on control, but on surrender. Acceptance also brings clarity about what remains constant: love, compassion, curiosity. The same forces that guided him as a child are still here, just quieter, deeper, more enduring. They're no longer goals or ideals. They're the water he swims in, the air he breathes. Finn realizes that he never truly lost his childlike heart. It simply grew into something spacious enough to hold both joy and grief without breaking. There are moments when he reflects on all that has passed, the friends who became memories, the adventures that became lessons, the fears that became peace. He feels no need to cling or regret. The story feels whole. He understands that endings aren't failures, they're natural. Everything in U, from mountains to friendships to lives, follows the same rhythm: creation, transformation, rest. Acceptance means trusting that rhythm, and perhaps most beautifully, Finn learns to accept even the parts of life he will never understand. The mysteries that once filled him with wonder or fear now fill him with quiet reverence. He no longer needs to name every star or explain every shadow. Some things are meant to remain beyond reach, shining from a distance. The unknown, he realizes, isn't a void to fear. It's the horizon that keeps the soul curious. This is the age of acceptance, not of resignation, but of harmony. Finn doesn't stop caring, dreaming, or growing. He simply stops resisting the way the world moves. He flows with it, finally and fully. He no longer asks, "Why me?" or "What now?" He just breathes, aware that the breath itself is the miracle he's been searching for all along. And in that breath, in that still moment between inhale and exhale, he feels everything: the past, the present, the laughter, the love, merging into one vast, gentle truth. He has always been exactly where he was meant to be. Finn's life has always been intertwined with Jake's. Long before he learned the deeper meanings of love, loss, or peace. He learned what it meant to share a world with someone who understood him completely. Jake wasn't just his brother, he was his rhythm. They were two melodies that moved in harmony, each shaping the other, each becoming more themselves through the presence of the other. For Finn, the journey toward balance, the quiet center he spends his life discovering, begins and ends with Jake. When Finn was young, Jake was the anchor that kept his wild energy grounded. Jake's calm nature, his endless patience, his laughter, they formed the foundation of Finn's moral world. Every time Finn leapt without thinking, Jake was there to stretch and catch him. Jake didn't teach through lessons or lectures. He taught through being, by showing Finn that life didn't need to be forced, that peace could exist even in chaos. To Finn, Jake was the first example of balance, strength and softness, humour and wisdom, stillness and motion, all in one being. Their bond wasn't always perfect. Like all brothers, they clashed. Sometimes because Finn wanted more from life than Jake seemed to. Sometimes because Jake seemed too content when Finn was restless. Jake's ease could frustrate Finn. How could he stay so relaxed when there was so much to do, so many people to help, so much meaning to chase? But beneath those moments of tension lay something sacred, the understanding that they needed each other. Jake reminded Finn to slow down. Finn reminded Jake to stay awake to the world. Their differences didn't divide them, they completed each other. As the years pass, that balance deepens. Finn begins to embody Jake's serenity, while Jake grows more reflective through Finn's questions. Their relationship becomes a loop of teaching and learning, each mirroring the other's growth. When Finn begins to question his heroism, it's Jake's calm that guides him toward compassion. When Jake doubts himself as a father or a friend, it's Finn's unshakable faith in him that brings him back. They are, in every sense, reflections, one defined by action, the other by presence, both orbiting around the same truth. Love doesn't demand similarity, only harmony. Jake's philosophy, to take things easy, to flow with the universe, once seemed simple to Finn. As a child, he admired it but didn't understand it. It sounded like giving up. But later in life, as Finn grows into his own wisdom, he sees the brilliance in Jake's way of being. Jake's peace wasn't laziness, it was trust. He trusted the world to unfold as it should, trusted himself to handle whatever came. Finn realizes that balance isn't found through control. It's found through faith, in others, in yourself, in the quiet unfolding of time. Their relationship becomes even more profound when Jake passes on. The grief is deep, raw, and transformative. For a while, Finn feels like the world has tilted off its axis. His laughter comes slower, his days feel longer. But over time, something beautiful begins to happen. Jake's presence doesn't disappear, it changes form. Finn starts to feel him in the spaces between things. In the warmth of sunlight, in the rustle of leaves, in his own laughter. The bond that once felt physical becomes spiritual. Jake's wisdom lives on not as memory, but as rhythm, the rhythm that beats in Finn's heart. Through that connection, Finn learns the deepest lesson of balance, that love doesn't end when life does. It transforms. The same way Jake used to stretch his body across distances, their bond now stretches across existence itself. When Finn feels lost, he can close his eyes and hear Jake's voice, not as an echo from the past, but as a living pulse within him. The brother who once walked beside him now walks within him. This realization changes how Finn understands himself. For so long, he defined his identity through contrast. He was the serious one, the driven one, the hero. Jake was the relaxed one, the dreamer, the heart. But now he sees that those traits were never separate. They were always part of the same whole. The courage he carried was Jake's influence as much as his own. The peace Jake embodied was something Finn had been growing toward all along. In losing Jake, he discovers that he never really lost him. The two of them are one continuous being, stretched across time and memory. This unity becomes the foundation of Finn's balance. Whenever he feels overwhelmed, he remembers Jake's ease. Whenever he feels too still, he remembers his own fire. He learns to live between those forces, not erasing one for the other, but blending them. Balance, he discovers, isn't about choosing calm over passion or stillness over action. It's about letting them coexist. To live fully, you need both, the movement that explores and the peace that accepts. Jake taught Finn that life doesn't have to be a constant search for meaning. Sometimes it's enough just to live it. Finn carries that wisdom into everything he does. When he walks through Oo now, he moves like Jake once did, unhurried, present, open. Every step feels like both goodbye and greeting. Every laugh feels like an echo of something eternal. The brother who once taught him how to fight now teaches him how to stay. Finn's balance is not a perfect stillness. It's a dance between light and shadow, joy and grief, effort and rest. He no longer fears that losing one will destroy the other. Jake's spirit lives in that movement. The two of them are still dancing, just in different forms. The love between them becomes the bridge that connects all opposites, life and death, action and rest, beginning and end. In his quietest moments, Finn sometimes dreams of the days when they were young, racing through forests, laughing until their stomachs hurt, fighting side by side against impossible odds. But now, when he wakes, he doesn't ache for those days. He smiles. He knows that those moments never really ended. They live in him, in every breath, in every gentle choice he makes. Jake once told him that everything stretches. Now Finn understands that this is true for love, too. It stretches beyond time, beyond distance, beyond loss. It's elastic, eternal, unbreakable. That's what balance really means. Not symmetry, but connection. The brother and the balance are one and the same. Jake taught Finn how to live lightly. Finn taught Jake how to live deeply. Together, they found the middle, the place where the heart and the world are in perfect harmony. And even now, as Finn walks forward through the golden light of Oo, he can almost hear Jake's voice in the breeze, easy, calm, laughing. "Take it easy, little brother," it says, and Finn does. There comes a point when every adventurer stops asking where they're going and starts noticing where they are. For Finn, that moment marks the beginning of a new kind of journey, one that no longer needs quests, monsters, or glory. It's the quiet chapter of his life, where the world is no longer something to conquer or protect, but something to walk through. This is the peace of the wanderer, the calm that comes when the search becomes the destination. Finn has always been a wanderer at heart. Even when he lived in the tree fort with Jake, his soul was restless. He wanted to see everything, to help everyone, to understand the world. But now, that same restlessness feels different. It's softer. He no longer moves out of urgency. He moves out of curiosity. His travels through Oo become less about solving problems and more about witnessing. The places he once rushed past, valleys, forests, old ruins, now hold his attention for hours. He's learning to see again. When he was younger, Finn's journeys were loud and full of motion, explosions, laughter, danger, triumph. Now they are silent. He walks through Oo alone most days, carrying no sword, no mission, just presence. He talks to creatures who don't answer, listens to the wind, watches how the light changes as the sun moves across the sky. There's peace in realizing that he doesn't need to change the world anymore. The world changes all on its own, every second, beautifully. The wanderer's peace is not the absence of purpose, it's the presence of stillness. Finn has lived long enough to see that every path leads somewhere, even if you don't know where. Every detour, every delay, every wrong turn becomes part of the story. He no longer needs to plan. He simply follows what feels right. The same instincts that once drove him into battle now guide him into silence. His life becomes a conversation between him and the world, not about control, but about trust. Ooh itself seems different. Now, it's quieter, gentler, more open. The kingdoms that once demanded his help have found their balance. The monsters that once roamed freely have become stories, lessons whispered by the wind. The land feels older, wiser, and so does he. There are fewer adventures left to have, but that doesn't make life smaller. If anything, it makes it deeper. Every simple thing, a sunrise, a bird's song, the sound of rain, feels infinite. Finn meets new people on his travels, but he doesn't stay anywhere long. He offers help when asked, but no longer imposes it. He's learned that sometimes the best way to help is to simply bear witness, to see someone, to listen, to share a quiet meal. He doesn't seek gratitude or recognition. His presence is enough. People remember him, though, not as the hero of old, but as the gentle traveller who passed through their lives, bringing a sense of peace that lingered long after he was gone. In the stillness of the road, Finn often thinks of Jake, not in sadness, but in rhythm. The wind carries laughter that sounds like his brother's, and sometimes Finn laughs back. He feels Jake in the way the clouds drift, in the warmth of the afternoon Sunday. Their bond has become part of the landscape, part of the quiet pulse of the world. The wanderer walks, but he's never alone. The solitude no longer feels empty, it feels sacred. Finn realizes that peace isn't something you find when you stop moving. It's something you carry with you as you move. The wandering becomes a form of meditation. Every step syncs with his breath, every breath with the world. The same ground that once trembled beneath his battles now holds him gently. He's part of Ooh now, not as its protector, but as its rhythm. There's humility in this stage of Finn's life. He no longer sees himself as the centre of the story. He's a page among thousands, a note in a song that never ends. This humility isn't sadness, it's freedom. Without the weight of needing to be someone, he can finally be everyone. Every creature he meets, every tree, every gust of wind, all of it feels like family. He's dissolved the boundaries between himself and the world. At night, when he makes camp under the stars, Finn often watches the constellations shift. He used to wonder about what lay beyond them, other realms, other adventures, other mysteries. Now, he just marvels at their quiet persistence. The stars, he thinks, are wanderers too. They move slowly through eternity, always shining, never hurrying. In them, he sees himself, small, steady, part of something vast. The wanderer's peace is not a retreat from life, it's an embrace of it. Finn's joy now comes from simple acts, sharing fruit with a stranger, fixing a bridge, listening to a story told by someone much older than he is. Each small kindness feels infinite. Each connection, however brief, leaves an echo. He doesn't need to stay anywhere to belong. He belongs everywhere. In rare moments, Finn will return to familiar places, the tree fort, the candy kingdom, the meadows where he and Jake once played. The world has changed, but it welcomes him like an old friend. He walks through these places not with sorrow, but with gratitude. He touches the wood of the tree fort and smiles. The walls are older, the vines thicker, but the feeling is the same, home, not as a location, but as a memory that lives in the heart. In this wandering, Finn becomes something timeless, a guardian not of kingdoms, but of peace itself. He carries no title, no mission, but his presence keeps the world in balance. The same compassion that once fueled his battles now radiates quietly through his being. The wanderer has become the keeper of calm. He doesn't know if his journey will ever end, and for the first time in his life he doesn't want it to. Every step feels complete. Every horizon feels like home. There's nowhere to arrive. Nothing left to prove. The world is wide, and his heart is wider. Sometimes, when the wind blows softly through the trees, he thinks he hears Jake's voice, not from above, not from afar, but from within. "You did good, man," it says. And Finn, smiling, whispers back, "We both did." The peace that follows isn't silence. It's music, the kind you only hear when you stop trying to listen. The melody of a life fully lived. The wanderer walks on, not chasing meaning, not escaping time, just being, perfectly balanced between the earth beneath his feet and the stars above. There was a time when Finn believed that every story needed an ending, that the hero's journey would lead to some grand finale, a final battle, a final victory, a final peace. But as he walks through the later days of his life, he begins to understand something far gentler, far more profound. There are no endings. Not really. Everything continues, shifts, transforms. The road only bends. It never breaks. Life, he realizes, is not a story with a conclusion. It's a circle, wide and eternal. The endless journey doesn't begin with adventure. It begins with acceptance. Finn no longer chases meaning. He lives it. Every sunrise is a beginning. Every sunset a reminder that beginnings never stop. He feels no rush, no urgency, no fear of what's next. The same curiosity that once drove him to fight monsters now draws him to watch the clouds drift or to follow the flight of a bird across the horizon. He understands now that meaning isn't found at the end of a path. It's written into every step. Finn's life has been full of transformations, and in the quiet of his later years, he begins to see how they all connect. The boy who fought for justice, the teenager who wrestled with love and anger, the man who learned forgiveness and balance, they aren't separate versions of him. They're all still walking beside him, like echoes of light. Every version of himself, every mistake and triumph, every heartbreak and joy, all of it belongs. The journey never erased who he was. It carried him forward. He sees now that even Jake's departure was not an ending. It was a passage. The bond they shared didn't end with time or death. It simply changed form. The love between them is part of the current that moves the world. When Finn feels the breeze, when he hears laughter carried through the trees, when he closes his eyes and feels warmth in his chest, that's Jake. That's the unbroken connection between all living things. Love, he realizes, doesn't stop at the edge of life. It continues. It always continues. This understanding frees Finn completely. He no longer clings to anything, not the past, not his identity, not even the idea of himself as a hero. Those words once defined him, but now they feel too small. He doesn't need to be anything. He doesn't need to be remembered. His peace isn't in legacy, it's in presence. He exists, and that's enough. The endless journey is made not of deeds or stories, but of moments, a laugh, a tear, a gentle breeze, a friend's voice, a dream that never truly fades. Sometimes, as he walks, Finn encounters younger travellers, adventurers, filled with the same spark he once carried. They remind him of his younger self, bold, idealistic, hungry for purpose. He smiles at their energy, their innocence. They ask him for advice, expecting grand wisdom. He only says a few words. Keep walking. Because that's all any of it really is. The journey teaches you, the world changes you, and one day you'll realize that the point was never to arrive, but to move, to grow, to feel. The endless journey is also the journey inward. Finn understands now that the roads he walks through are mirrors of the paths within him. Every mountain is a challenge he's faced. Every river is a sorrow he's released. Every sunrise is a new forgiveness. The land outside and the landscape of his heart have always been the same place, one reflected in the other. When he looks at now, he doesn't just see a world he's lived in, he sees himself living through it. Itself feels infinite, not because it stretches endlessly, but because it renews endlessly. Trees fall and grow again, rivers shift, kingdoms rise, crumble and rebuild. Even the ruins carry life in their cracks. Finn watches this cycle with reverence. He once tried to stop endings. Now he honours them. He sees beauty in impermanence. The idea that everything changes doesn't sadden him anymore. It comforts him. Change means continuation. Continuation means life. Sometimes he dreams of other worlds, strange lands beyond places he might never see. But even in those dreams, he feels peace. He knows the universe is vast, full of stories without number. He doesn't need to explore them all. Just knowing they exist is enough. He finds comfort in the idea that somewhere other beings are laughing, crying, living, learning, all part of the same great rhythm. The endless journey doesn't belong to him alone. It belongs to everyone, everywhere. He remembers how, as a child, he used to imagine that the world had borders, edges to reach, mysteries to uncover, goals to achieve. Now, he realizes that the greatest mystery was never out there. It was within, the mystery of being alive, of feeling, of loving and letting go. Every question he ever had has led back to this, that life itself is the answer, and it keeps changing the moment you think you found it. There's a peace that comes from understanding that there's nothing to finish. Finn's days now flow like the rivers he follows. Some are bright and full of laughter, others are quiet and grey, but all of them feel sacred. He doesn't need them to be perfect, he just needs them to be real. The road stretches endlessly before him, but for the first time he feels no need to see where it leads. Each step is its own arrival. Each breath is its own eternity. He often walks until dusk, when the light softens and the sky blushes gold. The world seems to hold its breath in those moments, balanced between day and night. Finn sits, feeling the cool grass under his hands, the warmth of fading sunlight on his face. He looks out over and smiles. There are no more monsters to fight, no more lessons to learn, just the quiet, unending song of existence. The endless journey isn't about forever. It's about now, the infinite folded into a single heartbeat. Finn understands that he's part of something much larger than his story, and that knowledge fills him not with insignificance, but with wonder. He doesn't need to know what comes next. Whether it's another day, another world, or nothing at all, it's all the same flow, all the same light, and so he walks on, not searching, not escaping, just being. The path before him stretches beyond sight, shimmering in the twilight. The air hums softly, the earth feels alive beneath his feet, and the stars begin to bloom above. Somewhere, he thinks he hears Jake's laughter again, not from behind, not from ahead, but all around him. Finn laughs too, softly, like the sound of wind moving through leaves. The world, the past, the future, they all move together in that moment endlessly. He takes another step. The journey continues. When all the walking is done, when every story has folded into silence, what remains is not the battles or the songs, or even the memories. It's the shape of a life, a pattern, a collection of faces that together form one whole. Finn's life, when seen from a distance, isn't a straight line but a constellation. Each version of himself, shining softly, connected by threads of growth, love, and time. The child, the hero, the dreamer, the wanderer, all still there, all still him. Finn once believed he had to become someone, the greatest hero, the bravest adventurer, the man who could protect everyone and fix everything. That belief carried him for a long time. It gave him purpose and courage, but it also narrowed his view of himself. He thought identity was something you built, something to achieve and then hold on to. But now, as he walks under the wide, endless sky of Oo, he understands that identity isn't a fortress, it's a river. It changes, bends, and flows, always moving, always alive. Each face of Finn tells part of the story. The boy who wanted to be good taught him innocence, that pure belief in doing right for the sake of goodness itself. The impulsive adventurer taught him courage, the strength to act even when he was afraid. The heartbroken lover taught him vulnerability, that love's pain is still worth feeling. The compassionate friend taught him patience, that understanding takes time and humility. The peaceful wanderer taught him that silence can hold more truth than 1,000 words. Together, these faces form something larger than any single one could express. A portrait of humanity in its truest sense. Finn's story was never about perfection. It was about learning to hold contradictions, bravery and fear, love and loss, innocence and wisdom, without letting one erase the other. The many faces of Finn are not masks to be shed, but mirrors reflecting the infinite ways to be alive. In his youth, Finn saw life as a series of transformations. The goal was to change, to become better, stronger, wiser. But as he matures, he realizes that growth isn't about leaving behind who you were. It's about integrating everything you've been. The boy and the man, the fighter and the dreamer, the student and the teacher, they coexist. The self isn't a single shape, it's a spectrum. Every age, every feeling, every mistake belongs. Sometimes, when Finn rests beside a campfire, he imagines all those versions of himself sitting around it, the small boy in his bare hat, the teenager clutching his sword, the young man with tired eyes, the older wanderer with a soft smile. They don't argue, they don't regret. They just sit together, each one whole, each one proud of the others. The fire between them flickers, bright and calm, feeding on memory and peace. He sees now that even his pain has a face, and that it too is part of the circle. The moments of loneliness, the doubts, the mistakes, they were all teachers, guiding him toward understanding. Without them, there would be no depth, no empathy, no wisdom. The face of sorrow is the shadow that makes joy shine brighter. In accepting that, Finn finally embraces the totality of himself. As he looks back across his life, he realizes that Oo, too, has many faces. The land that once seemed chaotic and strange is as multifaceted as he is. Ancient yet reborn, whimsical yet scarred, full of contradictions that somehow coexist. Oo and Finn have grown together, learned together. The boy and the world have always mirrored each other. His evolution is its own. His balance is its peace. Jake's face lives among those many reflections, not as a separate entity, but as part of Finn's own heart. Jake's laughter, his wisdom, his ease, they've woven into Finn's being so completely that he can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. That's what love does. It merges, stretches, becomes inseparable. The brother who once stood beside him now looks out through his eyes. There's no sadness in that realization, only warmth. Every person Finn has loved lives somewhere within him. Princess Bubblegum's precision and purpose, Marceline's creativity and vulnerability, BMO's optimism, Flame Princess's intensity, they are all threads in the same tapestry. He doesn't just carry their lessons, he is their lessons. Life, he realizes, isn't something we experience alone. It's a chorus of connections, all singing through us, long after the voices themselves have gone quiet. The many faces of Finn are not fixed. Even now, they continue to change. He finds new ways to see himself every day, in the reflection of a pond, in the laughter of a stranger, in the rustling leaves of the forest. The self, he's learned, is as infinite as the world it belongs to. You never stop becoming. You only stop believing that becoming means erasing. In that truth, Finn finally understands the essence of his life. He was never meant to be a hero who stood above the world. He was meant to be part of it, one face among countless others, each shining, each flawed, each beautiful. His story isn't one of conquest, but of communion. The faces of Finn are the faces of everyone, the child who hopes, the friend who forgives, the wanderer who keeps walking even when the road disappears into mist. He remembers something Jake once said, long ago, "You don't have to be perfect, man. You just gotta be honest." At the time, Finn thought it was just another of Jake's lazy sayings. Now, it feels like the deepest truth he's ever known. Honesty, the willingness to see yourself completely, to love the parts that still hurt, to forgive the ones that still grow. That's what makes a person whole. That's what turns all the faces into one. When Finn looks at the horizon now, he doesn't see a destination. He sees reflection, the sky mirrored in the sea mirrored in his eyes. Everything, reflecting everything. He smiles, because it's all connected, all the way down. He's not searching anymore. He's simply part of the great, breathing picture. The many faces of Finn have finally become one. Not because they've merged into something perfect, but because he no longer needs to separate them. Every version of himself belongs to the same song, the same rhythm that moves through ooh, through time, through love, through everything. The boy who wanted to be good became the man who learned that goodness isn't a single act or a single face. It's the ability to keep changing, to keep loving, to keep walking. The fire burns low. The stars shimmer above. The wanderer smiles. And in the quiet, the many faces of Finn, every laughter, every tear, every lesson, shine together as one infinite light. The story doesn't end. It never does. It simply rests, breathing softly, alive in the heart of Oo.